Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is something new. This is a podcast for the week ahead in astrology because at the moment there is so much going on and I thought I would give this a little trial run and see how it goes. Because there is a lot happening in the heavens in case you didn't know. In case you saw it manifesting everywhere else and thought, what's in the stars at the moment? That's what people always say to me around here if they're wondering if something's going very strange. They say, Bonnie, what's in the stars? And I'm like, everything. So, today is Monday, the 11th of January, and today we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter, Mercury sextile Chiron, and Jupiter sextile Chiron. So, this is a pretty nice day for an open conversation. You may see some news today. Now, the way that I would see this, to be honest, is some news that is somewhat healing. It can provide relief. It can provide good feelings. It's oftentimes good news when Mercury and Jupiter are conjunct. It can also be inflated. It can be anything that is exaggerated, too much oomph. Sometimes with Jupiter we can get the shadow side where it's very dogmatic. There's a lot of loud voices. There's a lot of noise in general with the astrology at the moment. But today it's a beautiful day to find a mentor, to ask somebody older for advice. With Jupiter and Chiron sextiling, oftentimes we can get calming words of wisdom from somebody who we would see as wise, a philosopher even with Jupiter. That may be your favorite astrologer, that may be a grandparent, that may be a parent even, but there is a strong mentor feeling in terms of what you want to share, but also, with Chiron in the mix and Mercury, it can be very psychic. So you can actually have a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight yourself. Because Jupiter's in the equation, yes, you can find a mentor, but sometimes being your own mentor is just as cathartic. You have a lot of wisdom within you. It's just finding a way to tap into it. And with so much in the media, it can be very hard to tap into your inner wisdom because you're so overwhelmed with other people's voices. There is also an aspect coming up on Tuesday. Now, this is Venus square Chiron, and oftentimes this would be regarded as romantic, overcoming a fear of rejection, abandonment, not feeling good enough. And this aspect can, of course, push you then to try and heal that relationship with yourself. I don't necessarily see this one this way, to be honest. Because Venus is in Capricorn and Chiron's in Aries, I feel that it is reminiscent of the clashes between Aries and Capricorn in the final quarter of 2020. A lot of people, obviously, with this pandemic and the financial situation, lost jobs or had to be out of work for a while or realized they didn't like where they were anymore. And so this can sort of feel like not necessarily knowing your place in the world. And I think a lot of people are probably feeling this on the down low. I think a lot of people are probably wondering, what is my place in the world? Because the world is different. Things have changed fundamentally and things are continuing to change. And with so many clashes this month in particular in the fixed energies, we're almost reluctant to completely embrace the new. It's bringing out the stubborn energy in people. So whenever I see Venus square Chiron and I'm thinking of the Capricorn, the cardinal squares, I'm thinking that there is some form of identity wound coming up here for a lot of people in terms of their progress. And I like that. I like that because the next day is that reset with the Capricorn new moon. And I have a video on that if you want to look it up on my channel. It is going into what this means astrologically for each sign. There's no tarot in this one, but let me know if you want that back. The new moon is a beautiful reset for Capricorn energy, for the goals, for the accomplishments that you want for yourself. Not what you've been told to want, not what you've been programmed or conditioned to think is important to you, what's truly important to you. Because the systems we have with Pluto and Capricorn, they're all going to be changing. So there needs to be something based on authenticity rather than just this mask we're presenting. And I think with Chiron and Aries, to me, because Chiron is in the first house when it's in Aries. It's very much to do with the self. Aries rules the first house. This feeling is, who are we behind the mask? Actually, with Chiron, a lot of interesting actors have Chiron in Aries. We think of Leonardo DiCaprio, we think of Renee Zellweger, and we can see with them that they're very much able to put on a persona, to be somebody else, but there's a little bit of mystique with them that I think is more so based on that identity wound. Who am I when I'm not an actor? And so with Venus in Capricorn and Chiron in Aries, there's a lot of reassessment of who we truly are versus who the government says we are, or who we should be, or our education system says we should be. So I like that those wounds are coming up just before the new moon, because the new moon is when we plant the seeds of the next step, the next intention, what it is that we want for ourselves, and basing it on a point of authenticity. What I will say though, with Mars squaring Saturn on the day of the new moon, depending on where you are, but there's a Mars square Saturn aspect, and we've done this. We had this last year, albeit in the cardinal signs, of course, so those identity wounds were even more important. This time it's different. This time it's between Taurus and Aquarius. And so Mars in Taurus is very slow. It's very methodical. Of course, with Uranus in the mix, it can go either way. It can be very shocking at times, even if it's going slow. Some things it's very much like the calm before the storm. I think when Mars is in Taurus and Uranus is in Taurus, it can be very calm, and then boom, there's an earthquake, or there's something shocking, or it's all too quiet, and then there's a cosmic kind of boom. With Mars in Taurus squaring off with Saturn in Aquarius, this brings up feelings of frustration. It brings up feelings of inhibition, feeling like a hamster on a wheel almost, feeling like you're not going anywhere. Just feeling like you're that little puffy hamster on the wheel continuously running, but you don't feel quite as cute. Where you feel you're going nowhere. And it's not that you're going nowhere, it's just that you're being challenged with your patience. When there's a fixed square going on, I feel very much that it is testing us in terms of our adaptability, where we can be patient, where we can be open-minded, especially because Aquarius rules the future. And when there's a clash between Taurus, which is very vintage, I think Taurus is such a vintage sign, and Aquarius that is like far-thinking, cosmic, it can feel like the future is either too close or too far away. It's feeling like you're not quite in the right time zone, feeling like you're not in the right space, not in the right time space. Almost feeling like you're stuck in the past or stuck in the future, and it's finding that medium. And the way to find that medium with this energy, I do feel, is by embracing open-mindedness, particularly because on the 13th, Venus is actually trining Uranus, which is bringing with it this feeling of, because it's Capricorn and Taurus, bringing with it this feeling of embracing beauty, embracing the change of beauty, embracing what's different, understanding that for many cultures, for example, a lot of their traditions and their, the beauty in differences is what I'm trying to say. The beauty in differences rather than fearing what's different. I like that energy. There is the combination of fearing change, but also loving what's different. And I think that there's a harmony in that. I do. I think that there is a harmony going on there that is quite potent, quite important, very surprising, but also something quite satisfying in a way. And it's what one you tap into. It's what energy you tap into most. This week we also have Jupiter going direct. Now Jupiter's actually been Uranus. We're nearing Mercury's shadow in Aquarius. It's going to go retrograde in Aquarius at the end of the month, and my moon is in Aquarius, my Saturn is in Aquarius, and I'm already feeling this. I feel like Mercury retrograde started for me a little while ago, especially with electronics. Everything's just haywire. Anyway, Uranus is going direct. Okay, Uranus went retrograde in August. Can you believe? Does that not feel like forever ago? Because it feels like forever ago to me. And when Uranus goes in a different direction, that's when the energy is the strongest. So Uranus has been retrograde, and we still felt the effect of it. You know, we've still seen the explosiveness of Uranus pop up, obviously, and we're seeing it more so this month. So Uranus going direct is really this, to me, it's like the sound of a balloon when it pops, that unnerving bang, and then there's a void. What's next? It's really showing us where we need some release in our lives, and this is manifesting a lot on the world stage, where people are defining their freedom and their restrictions. It's a big theme, and it has been a big theme for a while. The concept of personal freedom and personal autonomy, I guess. But the Uranus direct aspect to me feels very much that all of that is amplified. It is a cosmic boom. It really is a loud, bang-like energy. And it shows you where you need freedom in your personal life. You know, not to be too concerned with what other people define as their freedom. Not to be too concerned with what other people are doing per se. Because Uranus is very unique, and it asks us to see our own personal uniqueness. So where in your life do you feel like you could do with a bit of freedom? It can be where Uranus is falling in your chart. For example, if Uranus is transiting your second house, maybe you feel like you need more financial freedom and you have to think outside the box in terms of how you're going to get there. Maybe if it's in your seventh house, you're thinking, I need more freedom to be myself within this partnership, or it's amplifying feelings of, am I myself in this partnership? You know, it's figuring out where you need some freedom. And freedom doesn't always mean isolation. Freedom doesn't always mean that you're going to be the hermit that moves away from society. Not necessarily. No, freedom is actually an internal, personal thing. And you can bet that wherever you feel trapped at the moment is where Uranus is going to amplify it. So that's something to be mindful of. Then, of course, this week we have Jupiter squaring Uranus. We also have the Sun conjunct Pluto. I talk more about that in the new moon video. The Sun conjunct Pluto is shining a light on a lot of secrets, on a lot of shadowy stuff, and I feel that this could really make for some rebellious moments because it is occurring around a time that we have the clashes with Jupiter and Uranus and Mars and Saturn and things. And I do feel that with the Sun conjunct Pluto, there is the potential for some stuff to come to the surface that may be quite surprising. Or not even surprising. I think it was probably, with Pluto in the mix, felt on an intuitive, instinctive level. There was maybe a bit of suspicions. And I mean that more so in the world rather than your personal life. But Jupiter square Uranus, that is felt from the 14th to the 22nd of January, 6 to 7 degrees of Taurus. Bear in mind for the future, Jupiter and Uranus are going to sextile in 2022, and that's going to be very harmonious. There's going to be more pleasant surprises with that type of energy. But for now, the way this is manifesting for all of us is an awakening. Jupiter is very loud. It is an amphitheater. It amplifies whatever it touches. Uranus awakens whatever it touches. And you could bet if you wanted to be in a debate, in a bar, if Jupiter and Uranus were sitting there, I don't know how you'd fit them in a bar. It would have to be a pretty big bar, but bear with me. If they were sitting in a bar having a debate, you'd want to listen. You would want to think about all the amazing ideas that they have. And I know that Saturn's in the equation, so Saturn would be, in the background saying, well, I'm going to fact check this. I suppose it's kind of like a fact checker at an actual debate of any kind. They have their purpose. So there is these amazing ideas flying around and these amazing thoughts, and people are awakening to different philosophical or political beliefs, or they're awakening to a different way of seeing things, or they're just sort of figuring out that, some of this stuff we've really been restricted mentally and emotionally. It's not about being sent home anymore. It's about where we've been restricted in our minds through our schooling system, particularly through universities. There's a lot of debates about the way universities are actually educating people now, is that it is almost based on a set ideology, and that a lot of students now aren't sure that they have the freedom to think for themselves in many ways. which is interesting to hear, I have to say. So there's a lot of debate around that. And I feel like with Uranus and Jupiter, because Jupiter rules higher education, there could be some unusual events going on there. We did see when Jupiter was in Sagittarius, for example, that the university and college scandals in America reached their peak. But Jupiter's in Aquarius now and squaring off with Uranus. It's looking for a bit more innovation in the way we deal as a society, in the groups that we have, and the collective humanitarian causes. So even if it's a square, it's a point of tension to show us where we've become stuck and where we need a bit of disruption. Now, this can go either way because there's the shadow side of any planet, obviously. There could be a very disruptive rebellion, especially around the weekend. There could indeed be a lot of I suppose protesting is something we would see, rebellion of any kind. There could be a lot of shocks. There could be a lot of uproar. There could be many peak moments in terms of rebellion. But the thing about Jupiter and Uranus in the long run, because Jupiter is in Aquarius, this wants to bring progression. So does Jupiter. They want to bring opportunity. Jupiter is philosophy, medicine, and those are huge themes at the moment for a lot of people. Medicine in particular. And so there is a lot of stubborn energy coming to the fore in order to break free of this energy, in order to have a wake-up call surrounding where we felt restricted in our hearts and our minds, where there's been suppression of any kind. There could be huge changes. There's also a feeling that with Taurus energy, because Uranus is in Taurus and it's shaking up what we value, a lot of us could feel almost, a lot of sadness surrounding what we've taken for granted in this life, what we felt we knew and we no longer feel like we knew. So the important thing with this energy is knowing your individual impact. I think of Lord of the Rings. I watched Lord of the Rings recently, all 3 movies. And I thought about how the point that sticks out in Lord of the Rings more so is that there's an unusual association we all have with power, whereby we think the people at the top have the most power, and how oftentimes that power gets used for evil, and power is oftentimes generated through fear. But in the Lord of the Rings, the reason they chose Frodo, being a little hobbit, smaller than every other type of character, was because it was his soul, it was his mind and his heart were stronger than most. He was able to take this very toxic, manipulative energy and carry it to its end. And of course, along the way, he faltered. There's no doubt about that. But with good friendship and sound mind and belief in good, he made it to the end. And I do think that in many cases in our systems, those who want power should definitely not have it, and those who don't want it because they don't want the responsibility of other people in many cases in case they get it wrong are oftentimes the more pure of heart. So you can imagine that with this energy, the system all seems to be crumbling. Tolkien wrote that at a time when there had been a pandemic, where there was a world war that they thought they were through, and then another one came along, and they just thought about how so many people were dying for this war that was actually taking place above them. And so with Lord of the Rings, I think that there's a lot of magic in it for sure, but there is also a consideration that one small person can make a huge difference. And I know that sounds very cliche, but if you think about the pandemic, which I do think has shown people how much their actions actually matter, because it started with case 0, and you think how one person can spread a virus per se. That's an impact, and it might not be a good one, but it shows you that you have an impact. What you do matters. So if you're leading around this week with a feeling of uncertainty, and that uncertainty, because I drew some cards with this, and I had the 10 of Wands, the King of Pentacles, the 7 of Cups, and the 7 of Wands, where you feel great fear and uncertainty, you will become aggressive. And if you could lead with a bit of trust and a bit of faith that things are working out the way that they're meant to, you will actually find this week much easier to navigate rather than putting yourself into conflict and challenges with authority. Especially that's coming up in February, that's just going to exhaust you when you should just be opening up to what your future could look like. And that's not telling you how to live, that's just telling you that sometimes with this energy, because there's so much innovation in it, you could actually be having really good ideas. Now, one of the things I want to mention in the background, which I do think is actually very important, is the fact that Neptune and the true node are going to square exactly around the time of the Leo full moon. And of course, that's not this week, but it's leading up to that. And there's a feeling of uncertainty, a lack of clarity, a feeling of fear, a feeling of lack of faith even. But what I will say is this: when the North Node is in play, this is fated. This is meant to be. There is something about this that is meant to happen for humanity. It's about sacrificing old beliefs, moving away with the South Node, moving away from old laws, old justice systems, old philosophies, ways of abusing travel and the planet, for example, as well. And it can feel like Alice down the rabbit hole. And so we readjust our relationship with faith. We won't feel lost forever. You know, this energy is going to pass. We won't feel lost forever. And it will help us turn away from the toxic beliefs and the dogmatic beliefs and the I'm right, you're wrong attitude, and this constantly shooting arrows to meet targets. You know, it's moving us away from that, and it's putting us into our community, into our neighborhood, into conversations. The best way to have change is to start the conversation. And so we don't have all the answers. It's okay to not have all the answers. If you look at your birth chart, where Neptune is and where Gemini and Sagittarius are, will show you where you're maybe feeling very disillusioned, very unsure. For me, it's happening in my first house, for example. And I noticed last night it's actually the South Node would be in my 9th. And I have thought about this, and I've considered the fact that, yeah, I actually have moved away from some beliefs that I used to have lately, and I'm focusing more on the moment, more on where I am now, and that's a very freeing thing. When you look at the true node and where it is in your chart, that's where you have to focus your energy. And whatever part of the sky it falls in for you, there's a clue there. There's an idea, there is a prompt. And so if you're feeling very lost, have a little look at where the true node is for you right now. Have a little look at where Neptune is. See where you're getting really confused, really foggy. And be okay with not having all the answers. Because we actually never did. But we're closer to the truth than we have been in a while. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.